Hi, welcome back. Our previous lesson was on substitution and income effect, where we focused on normal goods. Today we'll be moving on to inferior goods. So, in our previous lesson, we saw that for a normal good, the substitution and income effect are both negative. Hence, an increase in price will lead to a decrease in quantity demanded, and vice versa, following the law of demand. In today's lesson, we will move on to the case of inferior goods. So we remember that an inferior good is a good in which the quantity demand increases when income decreases, and when the quantity demand decreases when income increases. Let's recall that when the price of a good goes up, two things are happening: substitution effect and income effect. Substitution effect is exclusively due to the change in the relative price of the good, where you substitute one good for another because the price of one good has increased or decreased. And income effect is due to the change in real income. So when the price of a good increases, substitution effect is always negative, so it says buy less of the good. But with income effect, the increase in the price of the good means that the real income has decreased. A decrease in real income means a decrease in your purchasing power. It means the quantity of goods that you can buy with your nominal income has reduced because the price has increased. So for an inferior good, even though the real income has decreased, the consumer is going to buy more of that good. So that makes the good an inferior good. So this means that for an inferior good, the income effect is positive, which means that if the price increases, the quantity demand resulting from the income effect is going to be an increase in demand. So let's keep this in mind as we progress in this lesson. Let's consider a consumer named Rose who consumes good X and a composite of other goods. So Rose indifference map and budget can be represented by this figure here. If we start from budget line B1 and a utility maximizing bundle E1, and this is on the indifference curve U1. Assuming there was an increase in the price of good X, which shifts Rose's budget constraint to B2 and changes her utility maximizing bundle to E2 on indifference curve U2. So what we see here is that the increase in price is going to move Rose from a higher indifference curve to a lower indifference curve. The movement from E1 to E2, this corresponds with a total change in quantity demanded from X1 to X2. Now, this is called the total effect. However, we can decompose this into income and substitution effect as we did in our previous lesson. Following the logic from our previous lesson, we find that the movement from E1 to EC on the same indifference curve U1 represent the substitution effect. Now, this corresponds a movement from X1 to XC. So this is what we've seen here. This is our substitution effect. And this shows the change in the quantity demand of good X due to the change in the relative prices. The income effect is therefore the remainder of the effect, which is a movement from EC to E2. And this is corresponding to a movement from XC to X2. So what we are saying here is that after the price of good X increase, the demand decrease from X1 all the way to X2. But we split the total effect into two, where we have movement from X1 to XC as substitution effect, and then the remainder as income effect, which is movement from XC to X2. We see from our graph here that substitution effect is negative, which means that the increase in the price of the good decrease the demand of the good from X1 to XC. But the income effect is positive. Positive means that even though the price of good X increases, we see that the demand for good X increase from XC to X2. So the positive income effect implies that for Rose, good X is an inferior good. That is, an increase in the price decreases the real income, which in turn increases the demand of good X. So we see that the net or total effect, which is from X1 to X2, is still a decrease in demand. This is because for rows, even though the income effect is positive, the negative substitution effect is bigger and hence dominates the income effect, leading to a decrease in demand. Even though good X is an inferior good, it still follows the law of demand because the substitution effect in this case is larger than the income effect. So this is all that we have on our lesson on income and substitution effect for an inferior good. Our next lesson will be moving on to a given good, which is also an inferior good, but the income effect in this case dominates the substitution effect. If you enjoyed today's lesson, consider subscribing. Thank you.